All right, I think we are live. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 21st town hall, I think it is. This morning we have Dani Storley with us. Hi, Dani. And Juan, of course. Hi, good morning, Juan.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, so before we get started with Dani, let's do a little recap of what's going on this week with Reskill Americans. We are into our phase 3 of the program now, and we are going to be yeah, so like people should be like grouped up into teams right now, and so hopefully you've gotten help from Shay if you were looking for new team members. I know I saw some link posts on Slack. If you're looking for another team member, that seems like a good way to go to try to find someone who's missing a skill set that you need in your team. But another important thing I think Shay also sent out to everybody is that it's important that you create an Asana project for your team. Even if you're doing an individual project, it's a good way for our instructors and mentors to keep track of where you're at and what you might need help with on your team project. And you remember these projects are a little bit more independently organized. Like you're going to have to do more work on your side to kind of be sure to keep on track and keep your project moving forward. And that's part of the, I think part of the experience is you seeing what it takes to kind of manage your own team. And but we're here to help, and you can always ask questions on our office hours, and if you have any other things that are not being met, send myself or Joanne a message on Slack, and we'll try to address it. And we definitely appreciate knowing where the speed bumps are so we can help everybody out. I did want to say anything else on that, Joanne, on the projects or phase 3?
Yes, I think you've covered it pretty much. I think the only thing I'll just reiterate, I think like for most of the people, the team selection has been going on for the last week. I know that there's a few people still out there who haven't kind of like situated themselves, or we have some people who had decided initially that they wanted to do solo projects and then decided against it again, which is fine, but we have to get everybody located. So if you haven't found a team yet, please reach out this week, because we're trying to get everybody going as fast as possible.
Yeah. Great. So part of the theme of phase 3 is, again, getting everybody ready to interview for jobs and to be able to apply for jobs and qualify for them. And so we have a couple of really cool things happening also this week. So tomorrow we have 2 live sessions we're going to be holding. So at 11 a.m. Pacific time, so it's 2 o'clock Eastern time, we are going to have a technical interview training session. So David Fowler from Microsoft, he's a software architect. He has agreed to chat with me about the technical interview, from a Microsoft perspective, and what a company like Microsoft will be asking technical questions. And we will try to do a sample technical, like role playing, what a technical question is like. And that is going to lead into, we've identified some volunteers to help us actually give everyone the opportunity to do a mock technical interview with a working developer. And so we'll have that sign up process after that. So, but you should watch the training tomorrow, and we'll live stream it on YouTube, and we'll also be it'll be recorded as well. And then we'll have a sign up process for you to practice doing a technical interview if you want to do that as well. And then at 3 o'clock, I know many of you have asked about non-traditional employment opportunities, like starting a small business or running your own company. And so I found someone tomorrow at 3 o'clock to talk about entrepreneurship and running a small business and that sort of thing as an alternative, or doing some freelance work. And so we're going to discuss the whole environment for how you might, even as a side hustle, do some work on your own. So that'll be a really cool talk too. And she's a really interesting person. She worked in the Obama White House and as a VA, head of the CTO for the VA, and she has an incredible career history. So that should be a really interesting talk. That's Marina Nitsa. So, okay. And tomorrow is also the deadline for Microsoft's LEAP apprenticeship program. I think many of you remember that we had Microsoft LEAP come talk to us many months ago, back in the spring, and they are. This announcement's a little bit late, but their deadline is coming up. So I'll send out a link later. But if you go look for Microsoft LEAP, the application process is happening right now, and it's for their session that begins next year. I think it's in 2022, beginning of the year. So, but they're taking applications now. You have to fill out an application and then write a couple of essays. And I think many people in our program do qualify for that apprenticeship program. If you have any questions about that, you can send me some email and we can talk about it. But if it's something you're interested in, that is available now too. And I'll send the link out a little bit later as well, but you can look for it too. Okay, trying to get through the preliminaries there. So Dani, welcome to a town hall.
Well, thanks for having me.
So Dani and I met many years ago in Seattle. We worked on a startup weekend project together, and we won second place in our team, I think, as I recall.
We did.
But I loved your design that you created for us, and so when I was searching for someone to talk to about the design process, and I think a lot of our program has been geared toward the software developer, on the technical side of things, and but we have a very large number of user experience designers in our program, and I wanted to give them a chance to hear from someone who hires designers and to really find out, like, what does it take to get hired as a designer. So I hope we can have that discussion this morning.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, really excited to talk to you all. It's been Mike, you've been amazing. It's kind of what a gift that we ran into each other at Startup Weekend, working on a project that I think you were supposed to be a judge on, and then you pitched an idea and got a team of people around you, and
I forgot about that. Yeah, I was invited to be a judge, and then I got excited about an idea, and then we made a team together, and so that was pretty fun.
It was really fun.
I remember losing a lot of sleep that weekend, though. It was tiring.
That's actually, honestly, I think that's how all startup weekends go.
Yeah. Well, anyway, why don't we start out? Like, can we? I'd like to hear a little bit more about your career. How did you get started as a designer, and what you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, I took a pretty unconventional path to design. It wasn't the first initial thing that stuck out at me. And at the time when I was looking at, what opportunities there were available in a career, it's anything creative. It just, UX didn't exist at that point in time. And my parents, they, bless their hearts, they never really gave me a path or helped me explore anything. So I kind of had to find it on my own. And it's really crazy how it all came about. Like and I didn't know until I started to go back to school, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, that this was an opportunity, but was always fascinated with computers. My mom came home with a compact Visario at, gosh, I don't even remember what year it was, but I was obsessed with Microsoft Paint, and like this company called GeoCities happened to pop on the internet, and you can make websites, and my friends and I would just make websites for fun. So didn't know there was a career path in it. So went on to go into architecture, and that's where I actually discovered computer drawing. Funny enough, I got certified in AutoCAD 2000 and was doing little drafting projects and such, and didn't really like architecture because I'm like, gosh, this is really hard.
You were doing drawings for an architecture firm, like they would hand you things to draw and stuff, or?
It was really funny. So for school, yes. And then I met a friend that was like doing it, or doing some just drafting work, and then just needed help. So helped them out. So kind of indirectly through an
Okay.
architecture firm, but I guess in school, what I realized, architecture didn't have, wasn't as pliable as like building a website or doing computer drawing, but subsequently discovered graphic design during that time, and then put it to rest for a little while. So went on and got my real estate license before the economy tanked, sold insurance, got involved in PR and REI, and then said enough's enough. Like there's still something inside me that needs to pursue this creative piece. So finished school, and that's where I found UX, and that was like a budding industry. And lucky enough was able to get hired at an agency that was one of the first agencies that started to do mobile work. They actually had a contract with Apple to build the App Store or do some of the back end work for the App Store. As I recall it happening, that they happened into mobile and started building cute little mobile apps, and then became a agency of choice to go to for big Fortune 500 companies, because no one had mobile in-house, or they weren't doing all the development in-house yet. So through that, got to work with Target, Amazon, Fox Sports.
Oh,
That's,
wow.
I think, around the time that you and I met, Mike.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was really, really exciting. And design and development were in-house. So I got to sit side by side with engineers and work through complicated problems, or experiment with like design and code, and seeing how we can see some of our ideas come to life. It was such a magical time. But then my husband and I, we wanted to move back to California, and he got a job in Santa Barbara. So I ended up leaving the agency that I was at. I ended up getting acquired by Deloitte, and in doing a lot of freelance work for early stage startups, which was really, really fun. One in particular was a company called Snapwire. We had, I think at the time, 6 people kind of kicking the tires of their product in private beta. And by the time my contract was over, I think we had about 250,000 people that jumped onto their product. And it was a site where if I needed photography for a project, I can put in like a submission, and then photographers would go and do like either take from the stock of photos that they have and submit it, and or would go out and take pictures. And it was when iPhones and these cameras were getting better and better, so you can get that kind of quality. So that was a really exciting adventure, and did a bunch of other freelance stuff with some really great startups. But that's when I started at Sonos, and that was probably one of the most amazing experiences, where you get to learn the interplay of software and hardware, and that in and of itself is, and Wi-Fi complexities too.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself is that product, the brand, the working with industrial designers, UX designers, researchers, engineers on both sides was quite the experience.
It's kind of a small world, because we had a town hall with Sonos several months ago, but with one of the other like program managers and an engineer. So
yeah, I think like, was it two or three people that you worked with before that ended up there? I couldn't remember.
Yeah. Several of my coworkers, when we worked on SharePoint and other things in Microsoft Office, that they ended up at Sonos. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it is. Well, that's another thing about design and engineering and tech. It's still a very small world. And I guess the last part where I'm at right now, I say this with much love to Sonos, but having experienced agencies and startups, they move really, really, really fast, to the point where you're just running to keep up, especially with design. And Sonos was very refined, and software moved at a hardware pace, for good reason. But I was still hungry for what is it like? How do I get back to the speed, yet go into an industry like jump into the next company that's really complex, that has really, really, really hard problems to untangle. So we had a neighboring company here in Santa Barbara called Procore, and they were building software for the construction industry. And so I jumped over to Procore, and that's when I started in people management and hiring, and took a more leadership role. And my team, when I started there, the design team was like sub 20 people, I believe. And now we're like just shy of 80, probably more, because we have to hire more people. Yeah.
What does Procore do again?
They are construction software. So
Construction software company. Okay. All right. So like how many total, like how many engineers compared to how many designers?
Oh my gosh.
That's a ballpark. I think it's like, what is the ratio kind of like? I don't know.
It's so funny that you're mentioning this too, because I'm working on this right now. What's our ideal ratio of like engineers to designers to, we call these things horizontals, where you have researchers, content strategists,
Oh, I see.
design technologists. But to answer it, I think, oh my gosh, I hope I'm going to say this right. We have to be like 500, 600, 700 engineers now.
Okay. With 20 designers. Okay. Yeah. So it's like a 20 to 1 or 30 to 1 ratio or something like that, maybe.
Oh, maybe. Well, no, I think so. We have, that's where we're at right now, but we have about 80 designers wholly.
Okay. 80. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
the way that we like to structure teams is one designer, one product manager for every 6 to 8 engineers.
Okay. That helps. That's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of engineers on things that are not customer facing too. So
sure. Well, I think a designer can create enough work for an engineer to like work on things for quite a while. Like in my experience, I think,
yes,
you can draw pictures really fast, or you can draw layouts and like user interfaces, and then the engineer is like, oh, okay, now I gotta make this thing a working design, so it takes, I think it takes a little bit longer, but
it takes a lot of thought. But I think I always say this, especially with designers, because hopefully it doesn't sound offensive, but design is pretty cheap. When you start writing code with 6 to 8 engineers on a problem space, it's hard to erase that back or fix it. It just takes a lot of time. So that's why design is pretty magical, because you can create a design, and it's like wet paint, and go out and test that with users, or go out and get feedback, or find what's working and not working through usability testing, and then rejigger it again really quickly before you hand it over to engineers. So we're building the right thing.
Yeah.
I guess it's our job to help do that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like an idea of the downstream costs are always the most expensive things, so the earlier you can make decisions, the earlier you can change if you need to change direction, do that at the very beginning, and then I think, even after developing it and then testing it and then like shipping it to customers, like the costs of change go way, 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 way up once everything flows down that river.
It is so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
So, well, maybe just I've been thinking about it, like just a little bit of like a day in the life kind of a question for you. Just, you mentioned like doing customer interviews and UX studies, and how would you kind of characterize like what a typical designer's day is focused on? Some people, I think I kind of imagine like, oh, just drawing pretty, screens in front of your desk all day, but I imagine that's not really what's happening.
Oh, definitely not. It's interesting. It just depends on what phase of a project you're in, what your day will look like. In early phases of a project, and depending on what type of project it is, are you building a new product or a new feature or a new tool set for a customer? If that is the case, like the business is giving you a signal that they want to pursue some things. There's something in the industry or something in the space that the business is looking at, or it could have came internally from you and your research, or the product team's research, or a technology capability that we want to go explore. So, and we found maybe a space that needs that exploration. So a big chunk of your time, not just the day in the life, but it could be, it could be months.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of discovery work. You're going out and you're talking to customers. You're working, if you're working at a bigger company, you're probably working with some researchers, some UX researchers, or if you are a smaller company, you're probably just working with your product manager and jumping on customer calls and figuring out the space. And it could even be, so in construction, especially before the pandemic, we like to do job site visits. So we go out on the job site and walk a job site with a user type that we're trying to solve the problem for. So a lot of times project managers, so walking next to them, talking to them, unpacking their problems, trying to do taking all that information back and analyzing and synthesizing we have a lot of tools and techniques that we use to lay all that out, from journey mapping to jobs to be done to, just doing general analysis of where the opportunity lies, in collaboration with products. So that phase, that whole discovery phase is really defining, empathizing with the people that you're solving a problem for, and then really creating a problem definition. Where another phase you jump into soon after that is that real fun stuff, where you're getting into the designs, you're pumping out wireframes, doing user flows to match some of the findings you did in your early discovery research, validating those and seeing if you're on the right track, and then manifesting those into prototypes. So you might be doing a lot of prototyping, and not necessarily from just a usability standpoint. Usually that comes later when you're about to ship a product, or engineers are supposed to work on it, but you're going out and maybe going back to the field and putting something in these people's hands or on their desks and asking them to go through a task and seeing if they're able to achieve it, and if they're achieving it in an efficient time and they're understanding it and it solves the problem you sought out to solve through design. And again, this is all usually in collaboration deeply with your product partner. And we love to bring engineers with us. We try to bring an engineer to job site visits, to usability tests, to research studies, because engineers are equally, if not better, at solving problems. So they might come up with insights. And sometimes in all of this, we'll run workshops too. So we'll do design thinking workshops where we get engineers, construction experts, or for Procore experts, or customers and product managers, and put them on whiteboards and use a lot of methodologies to try to extract out the best thinking, because everyone's inherently creative. So, and we take that back and materialize into those prototypes.
Oh, that's cool. I know that some of our participants are definitely more interested in the kind of customer research aspect of things. I know they've talked about wanting to be, do that kind of early, research with customers. And you mentioned something to me the other day that even your job title, like in the current industry as a product designer, that as opposed to a UX designer. Yeah, I see how you're talking about. You're really getting involved with the entire design of the product. You're not just working with how do we make this interface usable and things like that.
Yeah, I think kind of like I said, design goes through this existential crisis all the time and doesn't know what to call ourselves. And as we evolve and mature ourselves in the industry and the value that we bring, but yeah, product design is the new term that we're really embracing. And I think it's an expansion that we, instead of just, taking the product requirements and doing designs, prototyping to make sure that the usability is working to, handoff and delivery to engineers, we've evolved past that, where we're really getting into that upfront discovery or finding signals inside industries that we bring back up to the business and say, like, there's a really interesting unmet opportunity in this space and a real pain point for users, customers, whatever industry that there is, and putting together material to say, I think this is something that we should address as a business, and working with product to see if there's any market viability in that, and a way for a business to capitalize and make revenue on it. So we're part of that strategic thinking now in businesses, which is one of the funnest evolutions I've seen happen in our industry.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, this has been great background, but I would like to drill in now on like just what just getting into brass tacks about getting hired as a designer. Maybe we can start off talking about things like a portfolio and a resume, or even just like what are the things you're looking for when you're trying to hire designers?
Yeah. So I'll start with what I look for with hiring designers and kind of go down through the portfolio, resume, and such. I think probably I feel like it falls into 5 categories. Curiosity, that's kind of what I was saying in user research. But I'll kind of unpack that in a little bit. Passion for the craft, that's really important. Probably just as important for engineers too, because that's where you get to the real innovation and real thinking and interesting ways of going about solving problems. I have this own category that I put in, and I'll explain a little bit more, but anti-fragility. I used to call it grit, but I read this book that has completely changed my mind. And
oh, that sounds like Nassim Taleb's book.
That is his book. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know Nassim. I don't know him personally, but I know of him. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk about his book too. A little, not his book, but just what I took from it and how it applies to UX so beautifully, actually. The growth mindset. I think that's really important for people who, I feel like everyone you hire, you want to hire the next leader in the organization or the next leader in the industry. So that really means a growth mindset. And that helps us like build people's careers if they have that. And then humility, because I think that also fosters that growth mindset and really makes you like humility, but confidence. You know, you want to confidently speak, but you want to always be open to new ideas and things. So I'll kind of start with curiosity and try to unpack that a little bit. So you want to see candidates, just like I mentioned before, that are really proficient at gathering data. This could be behavioral data. It could be things like looking at how users use the product and find ways to unpack like how to make enhancements on that. So there's so many tools that we have, from looking at behavior analytics to running SUS surveys to doing some like general task-based analysis on current tools that help you get there. But you always want to unpack like what's wrong with this and how can we make it better. On the other side of it, when we talk about like more qualitative research, it's really like being very proactive about working with the business to jump on customer calls. I've seen people go and shadow like sales calls or implementation or customer support or customer success. So depending on what kind of organization you are, just really trying to dive in and listen and find the problems and be curious about how to make things better. And that also applies to like if you have a signal from the business and you want to go unpack and build a new product, like you should be out in the field with your product manager and hopefully a willing engineer and talking to customers and creating that feedback loop in your cycle. So that's curiosity. I think passion for the craft is really important. That's where you get like, you know, when you pick up your phone and see these like amazing applications out there, you're just looking at the beauty and how elegantly they have done things. That's the passion for the craft. It's not just like solving a problem, but it's solving it in a way that's interesting, that digs harder, that is more elegant and beautiful than anything that anyone's experienced, or just makes the software disappear in the background. And so you can just complete things. So traits that I see in designers that have that passion for the craft is they're always experimenting. They're never satisfied. They're always trying to move that digital paint around. They're always like validating or invalidating or testing or prototyping or using new tools that are helping them like to refine the crafts. So that's what I mean for passion for the crafts. And then anti-fragility. So Talib's book. One of the things that as he defines anti-fragility, it's the benefit of like things get from shock. So things that thrive and grow through volatility and randomness and disorder and like has a love for adventure, risk, and uncertainty. And in designs, what happens, it's the less romantic side of it. Sometimes you bust your tail to build an amazing prototype and you spend hours on it and you put it in front of a customer and it doesn't pass.
Yeah.
And in the thought of anti-fragility, it's those things that kind of like shock it, or that it didn't work, or it was just things aren't like working for all this work that you put into it. And you just take it and you're like, okay, like, let's try again and make it better. It's like every single time you run into like something, or a wall or a test, or like sometimes like the business might can a project you were working on, or stakeholders might do this thing that we joke around about called the swoop and poop. And it feels like, like we spent hours on this and this thing just, unexpectedly came in and created disorder with it. But picking up those pieces and then making it better and or growing from it, or thinking like, you know what, maybe there's something right in there, or there's something in the way that this was kind of like broken apart that I can go back and try to do it differently. That's what I used to call grit. But after I read that book, I'm like, oh, this is like, feels like it applies, because no design is ever perfect.
Yeah. Well, I know we've got, maybe inadvertently, we've given our participants some experience with that. And when we've been a little bit disorganized with getting people into teams and things where people would drop out and we'd have to replace people. And I know a lot of our participants just kind of stood up to the challenge and managed to figure out how to get stuff done or switch, move people around. And, and I think, anyone who's interviewing, who's gone through an experience like that, where they have an example of like how they were able to adapt to adversity, even this unintentional adversity that we created for them in our program. But I can see that is something that's going to be really valuable in a workplace.
Oh, it's so valuable. I always ask this question in interviews, not phone screenings, but long form interviews. I'm like, tell me about a decision in your professional work life where you just disagreed with it, and how did you respond to it? Because I want to see that character, that like the character that people are going to pick up and move forward, or that they're not going to get down and frustrated and toxic or anything about decisions that they have been made, but take that as like, which leads to like the growth mindset. Like, are you a constant learner? Are you picking apart situations like that and taking them and learning from them? Be it a prototype that a customer just completely bombed with the customer, to a business decision that's, maybe you don't understand exactly why it happened, or a team that's, really struggling to find its footing. Like the people who really like just pick up and move on and move forward are the ones that almost like carry teams forward too, and companies and businesses. So it's just a good mindset to have.
Yeah.
I guess the last one is humility. It speaks for itself. So, but I guess it leads into creating effective portfolios. And I promised you, Mike, I'd send you a link. One of my colleagues, Colin Brady, he thoughtfully put together this beautiful document that has books and portfolios and everything in it to look at and pick apart. So I'll send that to you to send out to everybody else, but there's some really great portfolios he put in there, and I'll kind of like talk about the high level pieces, because the portfolios are deep and detailed. So what we look for is discovery and understanding of the problem. Like, designers really need to dig at what problem they're trying to solve. And because that'll help you be effective. And that could mean
so when people, like, just to get very specific, like, so suppose I was applying for a job, and I want to know, like, you know, how many projects should I include in my portfolio, or just what should those portfolios look like? It sounds like you're saying you don't want to just see the end product. You want to hear a little bit of discussion about what was the starting point, what goals, you know, what problem was I faced with, and then how did I address it?
Totally. Yeah, that's exactly the framework. If you show it's almost like I look at it this way. Remember in high school when like you're in a math class, for instance, and like you can't just have a math problem and then put the answer to that.
Put the answer down without showing your work. Yeah,
exactly. This is showing your work. This is truly showing your work to an extent where you're telling a really great story. Because
so it's really kind of, the portfolios should be telling a story of like the whole journey that you took, as opposed to just the end product.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. And if you tell a great story alongside of it, it really, it speaks, it makes your portfolio a lot more engaging, and people really enjoy looking at it, versus like, you know, I think there's two things that are red flags on portfolios. It's like just showing the final, like you said, just showing the final like body of work. Just like, oh, look at this beautiful screen. And like, well, I don't know if you could do the job of a product designer that. I don't even know if you did all that. Like, how'd you get there, and you know, most of the time, a lot of the work that you show will be with teams. So like you need to show what part you played in that, and what a good collaborator you were alongside that too. The other ones that I think another flag for me is super disorganized, really hard to understand and comprehend what the work that they're doing, either too vague in their process or too verbose. Like, so that threading it together with a really strong story, from how you understood the problem to showing all the work, be it the research, the wireframes, the jobs to be done, the usability tests, the analysis, the competitive, like, you know, looking at the competitive landscape, all of those pieces, and how you wrapped all those insights up into a really simple, elegant, and delightful design. So that's really, really important in portfolios.
But how do you, you know, it kind of strikes me that, you know, someone who's applying for an entry-level position doesn't necessarily have that kind of deep background of things to show like that. What do you see typically as someone who's a successful entry-level applicant in a portfolio?
Yeah, what's all the same things, in as much as they can. So a lot of times, like, as an entry level, just like in engineering, like you have to run a project or two. So it's really great that your program like enables doing that. So if you have a really solid project and you're doing all the processes and learning along the way, that kind of experience is invaluable. I think if you can, especially when you're new in your career, like, design is always needed. So if you really want to put yourself into practice, like, go find a nonprofit that needs, you know, help, you know, or go to a startup weekend. Like, sometimes those you get a lot of practice, like, by doing, and you'll get some really cool, like, portfolio pieces out of it that that you can publish and share and show more of your process. So as an entry level, one is absolutely acceptable. If you have 2 or 3 where you've shown ambition enough to go and help, like, a friend build an app, or a nonprofit, like unpack a problem that they're trying to solve and do work for them, like that goes a long way too. But it's showing your work and all of it.
Yeah. How do I get real specific. How do people like share their portfolios? Are they creating their like a website, a landing page for their portfolio, or they give you a Figma file? What are people doing nowadays?
It varies. If I'll say this, if a recruit, I'll say this and then I'll toss it out at the same time. Like if a recruiter's like recruiting somebody who already has a job, we don't expect a real robust portfolio if they're just like, they poke someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, you look interesting. So I'm going to toss that aside. Like, we don't expect that. We're just like, show us a case study or something. Because we know we're working you, but that's because they have an attractive resume. It's like oh my gosh, why did I lose the question?
Oh, it's just like what is the form of the portfolio? Like, are people creating their own website and sending you like, to their landing page or
it's really interesting. I've seen people do this, which I think is actually really genius. They're using Figma a lot of times. Like,
send you a Figma file with a kind of a story in it, or the portfolio in it.
Yeah. So the cool thing about Figma is you have 2 modes of it. You have Mike, you are getting to experience this, you and Jawan right now. But
well, our designers are very familiar with Figma. Yeah. So.
Oh, sweet.
They're using
Perfect.
it.
So you have like your mode where you're like, it's all your artboards and you're doing all the work for it. And when you publish, or when you hit if you turn it into a click-through prototype, when you have the share, like the play share button, that's the link that people send out. So they're not seeing all the mess behind it, but you can use that. It's like it's something that I've been seeing that I think is like pretty genius, in the sense of, standing up a website, getting a host, getting your domain and all of that can be pretty arduous. So if you really need to get something out fast, Figma is absolutely acceptable. But traditionally, websites are very, just getting your website up. I really prefer Webflow for it, but you can do things that are less heavy, like Squarespace or Wix or things like that you can just get a template and modify it. The one thing I'll say about getting a template off of something like Wix and Squarespace, like I can smell a template from a mile away. So I think the thing that I love to see just in your portfolio, this is the one chance you get to be wholly creative, like to wrap all of the work you've done and to express yourself as a individual and build your brand. And so it sometimes can be hard to do that because you're doing a lot of introspection on like, who am I and how do I manifest this into the world? So templates are acceptable if you need something quick, but what I like to, when I talk about like passion for the craft and when I want to see a little bit more ingenuity, like it would drive any normal designer crazy to have too much religiosity. Like we have to play. That's where Figma is a great alternative because you have ultimate freedom to like really design. So I'd rather see a Figma expressing like really great your design character in your portfolio rather than a template for the web, but it's acceptable, but it's easy to see.
And I guess on the other end of the spectrum, and like building a completely functional website that expresses every part of your design is a lot more work than just the design itself that goes into that.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. All right. Okay, cool. Let's see. So we're working down the list here. We haven't talked about the resumes. I don't know if there are any other special tips about what should be in your resume or how what you look for when you're scanning a bunch of resumes. I know you probably get lots of resumes for every job position that you are listing.
Yeah, you know what's crazy? I hate to say this. I look at the portfolio as the resume.
Okay, no, that's great.
Almost.
Please say exactly what is real, because yeah, I don't have
Yeah.
any idea about hiring in the design world. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it's, maybe I'll say this, like a resume, if you're looking for, I just look at it like, what's their experience? Like how many
Yeah,
years they have in the industry, who they work for, what levels
sure.
have they had, kind of things like that. So if I'm hiring like a senior designer
Will
or
you look at
design
like
manager,
list of skills, like if they say they're proficient in Figma or like that type of sort of thing? Does that
not really,
matter to you at
no,
all?
not as much
Wow.
anymore. One, because like Figma is fairly new. So if you go back, if you
Okay.
predate people like, 3-4 years ago, they're probably going to say like, I use Sketch, but that's
Okay.
not relevant anymore. But that's what most of their designs
I see
were
what you're
based
saying.
out
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I would say I really look at the portfolio, and it depends. Like if you're really interested as a budding designer to go into the consumer facing industry, like having skills in a lot of the Adobe products and After Effects, and or if you want to go into marketing, like websites and do design and UX for that type of world, you're going to have a lot more you have to have a lot more broad tool set, because a lot of that is more, yes, usability, but also visual design. But if
Mhm.
you're going into more like product design and or UX, if you're going to hardware software type worlds, it's like having really strong prototyping chops is really good. I've seen people who play with Framer, so and other type of like tools, so they can do some really interesting prototyping. Like that kind of thing might be good to express on your resume. And then if you're going to like say software as a service type, like enterprise level type tooling, really Figma is your tool of choice, and then research and usability. So yeah, it's good to point out like the capabilities you're really strong at, but all of that truly manifests itself in your portfolio. So you'll see where designers like fall and where they gravitate towards on what level of like, you know, all the flashy marketing work to hardware software to, enterprise software. You'll see that manifested inside their process and their portfolio, and where all of that work really starts to shine.
Great. Okay. So they would list like their projects on their resume, but it's like you're really getting the meat of what they've done by looking at the actual portfolio. That's important.
Yeah, I would say definitely don't skimp out on the opportunity to like say to just bullet point some of the tools, tactics, frameworks, things that you used. I think LinkedIn allows you to put some screenshots and such of the work
Ah,
you've done at a company. So definitely throw as much visual work inside there, but really we're looking at like, and in your intro, if you feel so inclined to put some of the tools that you're really strong at, that's our processes you're really good at, that's great. But
mhm.
it's not, it all shows in the work.
Okay. All right. Cool. So what is maybe we can kind of talk about what is the whole like interview process like for designers when you have a position, you start listing it or whatever, and um, what do people go through? You do phone screens and things like that? I know in like the software developer roles, that's real common.
Yeah. Every company does it differently, so anything I say could be very different in the
Okay.
actual application. But
Yeah.
I feel like there's like 4 areas that no matter what, you're going to hit it in some way, shape, or form. So 30-minute phone screening. So you'll be talking to a recruiter and such, and they'll be guiding you along the process. And a lot of times those portfolios go back to like the hiring managers or in the hiring pool. So they're looking at your portfolios and
Mhm.
before you even get on a screening with the potential hiring manager. So a lot of that is so there, if you qualify past, like your portfolio qualifies you for a phone screen, usually the phone screen is going to be the manager saying like, do they have a solid process? Do they have high EQ? Are they a good fit for the company? Do they have signs to match the company's values? So that's usually what the phone screening entails, because you already passed through the portfolio process in the initial stage. Most, if not all, especially in design, do a 1 hour portfolio review. So they'll help you with the criteria. Everyone's different. They might say, just give us one case study, especially if you're entry level. You can't expect entry level to have a ton of like work to show. So a really strong case study where you're unpacking your process in more detail than you show in your portfolio.
So is that a presentation or a document? What is that?
Presentation. I
Okay.
highly recommend a presentation. I've seen people do it without presentations and it doesn't, or with just their website, it doesn't go so well.
Okay.
So
this would be like, well, I guess in the modern world, they'd be on a Zoom call or something and maybe giving a presentation to the hiring manager about their work.
yeah, usually it's a design panel. So
Okay.
it depends. You might have 2, 3, 4 designers, more like senior designers that are there evaluating your portfolio.
That
your
sounds
process.
scary.
It does, doesn't it? But hey, I'll say this, like designers, really successful designers are always presenting. We're always storytelling. Like
Yeah.
you're going to have to do this in front of executives, in front of stakeholders, in front of your scrum teams. Like, so it's just part of the job too.
But you know, when we finished our phase 2 projects, we had so many people doing their presentations. I was so impressed. Like, we had some really good presentation skills in our cohort. I think people did do a great job telling those stories of what they were facing and how they designed it. And yeah, it was really cool to see.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I think many people in our group will probably do well in a situation like that. So,
oh, that's
yeah.
great news.
Yeah.
Well, keep working that muscle. You're just gonna get better and better at it.
Yeah. But I know it is scary having, a bunch of people in front, well, public speaking is like the #1 fear of most people, I guess. But so.
Yeah, what's really one of my tips. I also don't want to leave out this one other step that you're going to see in the interviews. But one of my tips when designers are going out and looking for jobs, like and going through the interview process, like it's a courtship. Like you are equally, even though you're public speaking and you're putting yourself out there, you're also like seeing how these people respond to you too, because it's a huge life investment to choose a company to work for. So it's a courtship in a sense. So just being yourself and trying to be authentically who you are as you present your thoughts and your work is going to be a better expression of like whether it's a good fit for you or not too, because their responses might not be as like great towards your work. And you're like, yeah, I don't know if this is.
Yeah, that's true. Like you
fit.
can test like how supportive are these people of
Exactly.
my way of working, or are they kind to me, or were they kind of mean to me?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. Like if you get a bad feeling about something like after an interview, like that's probably a good sign that it's maybe not a good fit. You should keep looking at other companies. But the next, and this is another place that you get to, and this can be even more intimidating, but we usually do just like a code challenge that happens in technical interviews. We have design challenges.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah.
I'll hear about that.
Oh, yeah. So there's two ways that I've seen people do it. I don't know if Google does it this way anymore, but they used to give designers 3 problems to solve, and you had 1 week to kind of take home
a take-home test kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, we don't do that at Procore. We used to, but we changed it. So we have about a 90-minute design exercise where we like, it's in person. So, well, not in person, it's in Zoom. We just modified it recently.
Yeah.
Because we used to do it 1 hour with a whiteboard and let people give them a design problem, set the context, and then have them talk us through how they are using their design process to come to a solution. knowing that like, it's like here I would go user test and I would do, X, Y, and Z. Like you can't do that work, but you
you
tell,
can say, here's the place where I do this thing and this is what I get out of it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I would extract this piece out of it to move it to the next phase. So we do a 90-minute one where we give them the challenge. We give them all the context, the users, the problems that they're trying to solve. We kind of let them have like 30 minutes to process everything without without having people breathe over you, and then come back and present it to the group. Because, there's two different types of like strengths. There's the people who can just stream of conscious talk things through, and the people who have to kind of sit back and process all the information and before they come to a conclusion. So we gave that space in between. So those who like need to process information, or the stream of conscious thinkers can settle in and articulate it well, and or better articulate it well, just gives them the space to do that. And so, yeah, you might get a take home one. You might get one that Procore does. It could be an hour long where you're, in a Figma moving things around, but it's really about giving the designer a challenge, and then and giving the context for which they're solving the problem, and then talk through the process.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds really scary. And especially if you feel like if a lot is on the line, like if you feel like there's a lot at stake in the course of doing this, I can understand. I'm feeling right now this tightening of my chest and how much pressure this would be. But I would like to tell people, think of it as like a free educational experience. Even if you don't get this particular job, like think of what a gift that is to like get in front of a bunch of designers who want to see you succeed because they're looking to hire somebody. Go through the motions, and hopefully you'll get some good feedback, even if you don't get the job. But what a great opportunity that would be to be able to have that opportunity to go through and practice like that with other people helping you and looking at what you're doing. So just a way to maybe settle people's nerves a little bit. I would be nervous about it, but
yeah, something you said, Mike, that was really sweet, and it's absolutely true. People want you to succeed in these interviews. They want you to have a great portfolio, and they want you to have a great experience with the design challenge. And no one's like trying to like stop. It's just stop you from being successful. Everyone's just trying to figure out if like the tools and capabilities are there, and if it's a good culture fit on both sides. So everyone wants the success of candidates, and they want a really good candidate experience, because that's also a reflection of a business and a company and a culture. So
yeah,
that's even though it is intimidating, again, it's just also being yourself, because that's the most important thing. But I guess, yeah, the last one I'll note, and I'll drop it. It's usually there's some kind of like, manager interview, or like your hiring manager interview or team member interview. They're just really analyzing EQ. And if it's a hiring manager, they just want to make sure that it's the right place for like your career ambitions meet or match the path that they have at the company. And if it's a good culture fit, if you're a good teammate, how you work with product and engineers, and how collaborative you are. That comes out in your portfolio review just as much as it does in the one-on-ones. So.
All right. Sounds good. I don't know if you had any tips about preparing for these interviews, or just, it sounds like really working on their portfolio is like going to be the biggest one, and just doing the work and maybe practice presenting.
Yeah. Be yourself and be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's all you can do.
Yeah. All right. And I think we had, one question here. So suggestions for very entry-level designers. Would you suggest applying to an internship first, or trying to get into an entry-level job?
I mean, it doesn't hurt if you have the opportunity. It doesn't hurt to try both. Like internship is going to be really, really great, because that's internships might give you a real world project, and I would say with internships, be cautious. Like look at something when you're interviewing with them, I highly recommend internships that are paid, because when they're free, they're trying to like, your work and your mind and your time are very precious. So try to find internships that are paid, and try to find internships that allow you to get a whole project under your belt. So the internship is just as much about a company, like if it's a right internship, it's just as much about a company wanting to help grow the craft of UX as it is, having some, helping with something that the company might not have the staffing for. So they'll get some really great thinking out of the internship. So if it's a project and you're getting paid, and it's a really nice thing to get that under your belt, so you can put that in your portfolio. And a lot of those internships honestly lead to jobs.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't hurt to kick the tires on entry level, like junior level design positions if you have a project, really strong case study under your belt. So you should do both if you can, and see which one hits first.
Sounds great. Well, I've learned a lot this morning. Juan, did you have any other questions?
Yes, I think there was just one more that was saying, what is the ideal number of projects you should have in your portfolio?
It depends on what level you are. Like if you've been in the industry for 10 years, like you just want your best. So 5 of your best. You don't need to show all that, old stuff. If you're entry level, it's really good. You have to have one to show that you could do the work. If you can get if you can get 2 or 3 extra on top of that, better for you for sure.
But it sounds like have one strong one, like have one. And I really like your idea of like showing the whole story of the case study that you did, how you approach the problem, and not just showing that final design. That's and I know I have seen some other portfolios, and you just kind of see the finished site, which is great. And you can say, oh, that's a beautiful website. I appreciate the artistic abilities of the person to be able to create a compelling design and things like that. But it sounds like what companies are really after is, or even more important to them is the problem solving and the ability to work with customers to figure out how to solve problems and then realize them in the design.
Yeah. And what's another thing too, if you can only get one really strong portfolio piece and case study, but you're doing designs on the side just for fun, just to learn, which like I said, passion for the craft, like you can't stop. And so if you're like posting things on Dribbble or sharing your work or your process or blogging or any other media or any other.
What is that? Dribbble?
Dribbble. Yeah.
Dribbble. Yeah. Okay. So it's like, that's a design. It's like, what is it like?
It's almost like Behance. It's almost like a portfolio site where people
or Instagram designs, or
I'll probably say like a GitHub for designers, essentially.
Okay. Right.
I like that, a GitHub for designers. Yes. Right. So post away on things like that. That's also like, it will never replace having a really strong case study, but if you're doing some really incredible work or experimenting or having fun with design, like it's really great to show that, like, you stretching your muscles in that sort of way by posting outwardly that way, or putting it on your portfolio saying like, hey, here's some things I'm experimenting with.
I think I've seen people like they use apps and they get frustrated with them saying, oh, this is how I would redesign it. This is what they should have done. And they just do like, why didn't, whatever, Hulu design their app to look like this? Like, I think this is better.
And that's like perfectly acceptable too. Funny enough, some of those things get the most attention social media wise. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've gone up mostly through our list, and we're kind of run out of time. I want to respect everyone's time to this morning. I got a lot of great information. Anything else you wanted to add, Dani, before we head off?
No, I should just make sure I'll send you all my info. Like, I know you have my information, but if anyone feels like they want to reach out or they want to talk to, I have a couple designers at Procore that I asked, like, hey, if anyone wants to volunteer to share, like, or support or mentor. So I have a handful of people that kind of reached out and wanting to help if possible. So if anyone needs
That's amazing.
mentorship.
Okay, well, yeah, so like I will definitely take those links and names and people and we'll help match people up so they can contact you on or I to get those if they want to talk to someone in your company. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. And even if it's like to come in and you need to get some critique on your work or running into a design block, like let us know. I'll try to pool all the people and we'd love to like help support you all as you go through this process and future processes. So
thank you, Dani. You've been so generous with us. So thank you so much for your time this morning and everything you've been doing for us. So really appreciate it.
Oh, well, it's an honor and best of luck to everyone in the program.
All right. Okay, well, that will wrap. We'll do a wrap. And thanks again, Dani and Juwan. And so, yeah, tomorrow we'll look for that technical interview thing if we have any software developers still hanging around on this live stream and the entrepreneurship thing tomorrow. So, all right. See you. Bye. Bye.